I never expected to find love in the arms of a poor cleaning lady after 15 years of loneliness. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The sun was blazing overhead, beating down on my fragile heart just as hard as the doubts were pressing in. I stood in my sterile penthouse, surrounded by polished marble and expensive art, yet I felt a gnawing emptiness deeper than anything I had ever known. That day, I caught a glimpse of something Simeone unexpected. It all happened when I returned from a bleak meeting, dragging my tired body through the hall. I caught a faint scent of lavender. It breathed life into my deadened spirit. Intrigued, I followed the smell, each step drawing me closer, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. There she was, an older woman with gentle hands, wiping down the mahogany table near my window. Her name was Maria, and her dark eyes sparkled with determination against the backdrop of her worn skin. All at once, my world shrank to the sight of her. She moved with such grace, as if she were dancing. I remembered the heaviness of my loneliness, aching and raw, and suddenly, the air around me shifted. There was a warmth in her presence, a comfort I hadn't felt in years. In that moment, everything else faded into a blur. The days passed, and with each clean surface came a deeper connection. Our conversations began to breathe, laughter intertwined with tales of her life of struggle, yet offset by dreams and resilience. She told me about her son, how hard they fought just to make ends meet, and my heart twisted with empathy. Mariah's existence was woven into the fabric of the city, threaded with stories both painful and beautiful, but as our bonds deepened, shadows gathered. I started noticing the way her hands trembled when she spoke of her past, or that flicker of fear in her eyes when she heard the door creak behind her, always looking over her shoulder. Questions buzzed in my mind, but I couldn't pry. There was something sacred about the space we shared, though clouds of unspoken truths lay thick between us. Then came the night when everything changed. I stood at my window, searching for the stars that had always been so far away. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed below, breaking the silence. My heart raced. I watched as the streetlights flickered, and among the chaos, I spotted Maria running, her silhouette blurred by the rain. What was she running from? My chest tightened, a lump forming in my throat. I sprinted down the stairs, driven by adrenaline and fear. The street was empty, but I felt the crushing weight of loss looming in the air. I couldn't let her slip away. I would know her secrets, what darkness haunted her. But as I turned the corner, I paused, seeing her there, huddled with a stranger in an alley. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't hear their words, but their intensity wrapped around me like an icy grip. Who was he? Why did her face contort with fear? I was about to step forward when I noticed something, a glint of light off metal. A knife? My heart stopped, pounding loudly in my ears. The shadows entwined, holding me in place. I wanted to scream, to charge in, but fear rooted me to the ground. What if I went in blind and made it worse? Then Mariah's head snapped up, catching my eye for the briefest of moments. A chasm opened between us, as confusion and terror cascaded through her gaze. I never expected to find myself entangled in a world so foreign, now questioning not just what she hid, but where my heart truly lay. She was everything I never knew. I crave her laughter, a melody, her touch a balm. But if she was hiding this darkness, what would it mean for us? How could I love someone whose life was shrouded in danger? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The rain-soaked pavement shimmered like scattered diamonds under the flickering streetlights, but the beauty faded as dread gripped my chest. I was rooted to the spot, thoughts racing and conflicting emotions crashing like waves against the shores of my conscience. Maria's startled eyes penetrated the veil of darkness, her unspoken plea reverberating in my mind. It was a moment frozen in time, and in that heartbeat, something fundamental shifted. The stranger leaned closer to her, his voice hushed but urgent. I could only catch snippets, shards of their conversation that sliced through my thoughts. "You promised," he insisted, and her nod held a tremor that threatened to shatter my heart. What had she promised? Then, as the stranger shifted, I glimpsed something around his waist, a gun tucked beneath his shirt, hidden but not entirely concealed. Panic clawed at my throat. Maria was in danger, and I was paralyzed by the instinct to protect her. What did this man want from her? My consciousness flickered between anger and fear, desperately battling indecision. "Maria." I finally managed to call out, my voice breaking through the static of dread. It sounded foreign, even to me. She turned, her face a storm of emotion, relief, fear, and something that felt achingly like regret. In that brief moment, it became painfully evident. My feelings for her were no longer an innocent distraction. I was inextricably bound to her, and I would fight for her, even against my own paralyzing fears. The stranger's gaze shot toward me, filled with a dangerous recognition. "Stay out of this," he warned, his expression morphing into a snarl that twisted my stomach. "This doesn't concern you." But it did concern me. It concerned me more than anything else in my life ever had. I could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on my chest, akin to a vice tightening its grip. Maria's life wasn't just a fragile reveal, it was a whirlpool dragging me into depths I had never known existed. "Let her go," I urged, stepping into the alley despite the chill that crept into my bones. The rain poured harder, drenching my suit, but I pressed forward, fueled by something much more potent than fear, love wrapped in desperation. "You don't have to do this." Maria's eyes went wide, flickers of hope battling with the shadows of despair swirling around us. "No, stop. Just leave it." But the urgency in her voice fell away to a whisper. The stranger yanked her closer, as if claiming ownership over her very existence. I could hear the sound of sirens in the distance, a haunting reminder of the time slipping away. The precarious balance of power was shifting, and I felt a flicker of resolve ignite within me. "Get away from her." The shout pierced through the downpour, carrying with it a newfound strength. I hadn't anticipated the ferocity of my own voice, and it sparked a reflexive anger in the stranger's eyes. In that charged moment, Maria's instincts kicked in. "Just go, please. I'll handle this." Her voice trembled yet held a strangely regal tone, as if she possessed the secret to all that was right and just. But I would not leave her to navigate this peril alone. "Handle this?" I shot back incredulously, my heart pounding in urgent rhythm. "How could you possibly handle someone like him, Maria?" I gestured toward the stranger, whose presence was suffocating ours. Maria's lips pressed into a tight line, and I saw the quiet storm brewing beneath her surface. The years of battle, the scars she carried, battles that had etched themselves into her spirit. She caught my gaze, and I could see then what she was made of, what I had hoped to believe all along, resilience and grace woven into her very being. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the Aaliyah gunshot that silenced the rain for a split second, as fear writhed like living shadow. A bright flash of chaos erupted, and my insides twisted with the instant realization I was no longer just an observer in her story. I was intertwined with it now, engulfed in the same darkness that threatened to separate us. Still in shock, I stumbled back, my heart racing while dread coiled around my chest. I scanned the alley, the echoes of life beyond our troubled bubble fading slowly into oblivion. Then came clarity like a lone star breaking through storm clouds. I looked at Maria. Her face, a map of myriad emotions, reflected my own uncertainty. And yet in her eyes, there was a flicker of defiance, a promise that, even in the depths of despair, she had not given up on herself. But as the siren wails grew louder, I sensed a shocking revelation lurking just beneath the surface. There was more to her struggle than this stranger, this moment. I had barely scratched the surface of the life she lived and the secrets she harbored, and as the shadows merged with the sound of approaching help, dread settled heavily within me. Could I truly be the anchor she needed? Or was I unwittingly dragging her deeper into the storm? The answers were wound tightly around the very fabric of our tenuous connection, pushing us closer to a precipice I never anticipated. As the sirens wailed into the night, I grasped Maria's hand, letting desperation anchor my grip. And in that moment of shared uncertainty, I knew one thing was for sure: neither of us could run anymore. The darkness of the alley held a blanket of chaos, the rain continuing to wash away the remnants of whatever had just transpired. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing ever closer, yet my world had narrowed to the beating of my heart against Mariah's trembling hand. "Please, Maria." What did he mean by I hesitated, unable to finish the question that clung to my tongue like ash. There were too many unspoken things hanging between us, and I feared that once I opened that door, I might never be able to close it again. "Don't," she murmured, her voice barely a breeze against the storm. "Not now. We need to." But before she could finish, I heard footsteps splashing through the puddles like distant drums. The stranger's grip on her tightened, and my heart plunged into despair. Would he pull a weapon again? I felt paralyzed, torn between the need to protect her and the imminent arrival of the police who might misunderstand the situation entirely. In that moment, she turned to look at him, and something shifted in her gazia resignation that pierced me more than any bullet could. "Just go, please." "You can't help me," she pleaded, her voice breaking as it mingled with the growing cacophony of the sirens. Her eyes shimmered with tears that caught the flickering light, reflecting a myriad of emotions I couldn't fathom. Pain, fear, but also perhaps something deeper, something buried within that I had yet to discover, but I couldn't leave her. "Not now, not ever." Before I could respond, the stranger lowered his head, and for a brief moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes, a glimmer of vulnerability, quickly masked by his anger. "You think they'll save you?" His laugh was jagged, tinged with bitterness. "They're too late, Maria." "You know what happens next." Panic surged in me as I clutched her hand tighter, anchored amidst the storm. "You won't hurt her," I declared with more bravado than I felt. "Whatever this is, it ends now." Something cracked within Maria at my words. The fire in her spirit was undeniable. She drew a shaky breath, and as much as fear swirled around us, it was tempered by something powerful: determination. "You don't know what you're saying," she whispered, her eyes darting between me and the stranger. "Let me handle this. No." I took a step closer, raising my voice, imbuing it with the certainty I wished I felt. "You deserve more than this. You deserve better than him." The stranger's grip was still tight around her waist, but Mariah's eyes met mine, and in that instantaneous connection, I felt the air between us shift. It was a moment filled with clarity, fragile yet unshakable, as if in her gaze, she revealed pieces of herself that had long been hidden: her hopes, her fears, her past. "I can't stay in hiding forever," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "I can't keep running from who I am." "Who are you?" I asked, yearning for the truth that seemed to tear at the seams of our connecting threads. "You're so much more than this." Before she could answer, the stranger barked a laugh, a sound of pure malice that sent shivers racing down my spine. "What a lovely little fairy tale you're spinning, but the truth is ugly, Maria. Remember that when they find you." And with that, he looked over his shoulder toward the street, the chaos of approaching sirens simmering at the edge of our reality. It hit me then the weight of her secrets was more profound than I had imagined. "A fairy tale?" I echoed his incredulity. What could you possibly mean by that? But Maria shook her head, a resolve blossoming despite her fear. "You don't understand what's at stake. I'm tired of running, tired of being afraid." Her voice lowered, filled with a grave urgency. "If they come, if they see what I've been hiding." Before she could finish, the clamor outside rose, drowning her out: a cacophony of flashing lights and voices demanding order. The sanctuary of the alley felt like a collapsing universe. In those breaths, the weight of her words shifted like a great stone pressing down on us. "Maria, whatever it is, we can face it together." "You're not alone," I urged, desperate yet unable to hide the resolve that now fueled me. But she blinked rapidly, as if caught in the grip of a wave about to crest. "I don't know how to tell you it was too late." The moment shattered as a squad car pulled to a stop at the mouth of the alley, the blue and red lights spinning in a blinding flurry that illuminated the tension building around us. The stranger leaned into Maria, whispering dangerously, his breath hot against her ear as he threatened, "You'll regret this." In that instant, my heart dropped, and I saw it reflected in her eyes, a dawning realization of all that was standing between us and the truth. I had stepped into her world, and now as sirens blaring and voices shouted orders, everything was about to unravel. The unknown loomed larger than ever, and as the officers stepped into the alley, I realized that not only did Maria have a past shrouded in secrets, but our fragile connection was caught at the precipice of exposure that could change everything. And with that, I held her gaze, teetering on the edge of a revelation that threatened to fracture us both. Could love truly blossom from the ashes of a past I knew nothing about? Or was this the moment that would tear us apart forever? The blue and red lights danced upon our faces, flickering hope and dread in equal measure. The officers shouted questions, their authoritative voices reverberating off the alley walls. A shadow passed through my mind. What if, in trying to save her, I only inflicted further harm? As the first officer approached, a hulk of a man with a peppered beard and narrowed eyes, he seemed ready to pounce, to piece together the chaos we had woven. I dared not let go of Mariah's hand, but the panic within me surged like waves crashing against the shore, threatening to pull me under. "Step away from her," he barked, gesturing with a baton just as I felt the stranger shift, the tension between us twisting tighter. I could sense Mariah's breath hitch, the tremor in her body matching the urgency in my heartbeat. "No," she cried, her resolve nudging at a hidden strength. "I'm not going anywhere." The strange man released his grip on her, stepping back, his face contorting into something vicious for just a heartbeat before he caught the fear still flickering at the edges of her defiance. "You think this will end well for you?" He shot back, but shifted briefly as if sensing the changing tide of control. "Not this time." My voice rang out with an intensity one didn't entirely own, but felt surging through me, a cathartic roar against the chaos that threatened to consume us. The officer's demeanor shifted as he caught sight of Mariah's despair. "Ma'am, are you hurt? Do you need assistance?" "I'm fine." Her voice cracked, yet within it lingered an undeniable spark that lit the shadows of her vulnerability. Just give me a moment." Time stretched painfully, the moment hanging like smoke caught in the alley's throat. I could see doubt flickering in the officer's eyes as he watched the dynamic between us, a tangle of fear and defiance, weaving together in a way that made it seem as though we were cocooned in our own world, oblivious to the chaos erupting around us. The stranger took a step back, uncertainty coursing through him as if he hadn't anticipated the bonds that tethered Maria to me. For just a fleeting second, he seemed lost, his bravado slipping away. It was in that moment that I understood there was a fragility in him, perhaps a flaw that made him human, despite the darkness he enveloped us in. "Maria," the officer insisted, his tone softening. "You don't have to do this alone. We can help you." But she shook her head, tears streaming down her face, a mixture of rage and pain. "No, you don't understand. I can't be saved. It's too late for me." "Don't say that," I urged, squeezing her hand tighter, anchoring her amid the storm. "You're not lost. You're standing right here, with me." With a fierce cry, she pulled away from my grip, a heartbreaking moment that felt like a sundering of our connection. "You don't know what I've done." Her voice rose, raw and jagged, echoing off the alley's damp walls. "You don't know what I carry with me." The officer stepped closer, now a comforting presence. "And you don't have to carry it alone anymore. Whatever it is, let us help you." The stranger's hand gripped her shoulder again, pulling her back toward the darkness that had gripped her all along. "Listen to them, Maria. They can't undo what's already been done. This world doesn't forgive. Just ask yourself, do you really want to be saved?" The question hung heavy in the air, a taunting melody that spiraled through my thoughts like barbed wire. Maria's gaze flickered between me and the stranger, each second drawing out the raw uncertainty that crackled like electricity between us. "Choose," I whispered, my voice a low plea. "Choose to believe you deserve a life beyond this." But just as her hands trembled on the precipice of decision, a flash of shadow loomed up. The Alia's second officer appeared abruptly, his face taut with concern. The scrape of his boots echoed ominously, a harbinger of what could come next. "Maria," he barked. "We need to secure the area." "Wait," I shouted, desperation clawing at my throat. "Please, give her a moment." And yet, above the chaos, a soft voice whispered from the crowd that had begun to gather at the alley's mouth. A face I didn't recognize. A woman with kind eyes stepped forward, her concern etched deeply into her features. "She's not alone," she called out, breaking through the barrier of fear like a lighthouse through fog. "Someone needs to help her break free." Hope surged within me, a fragile whisper that maybe, just maybe, this would end differently than I had imagined. But it was swiftly eclipsed by the grim reality around us. The shadows stirred and a sudden shout echoed through the alley, louder and more desperate than the sirens that surrounded us, pulling the focus away from Maria and me. "Stop." "No." I turned just in time to see Mariah's gaze widen in horror. The stranger, lost in the tumult and feeling the tide turn on him, stepped back, his body tense, hands ready and clenched. "You don't want to see this." And as the tension reached its razor's edge, my heart raced with the inescapable realization that we were now veering towards an abyss from which none of us might return. Maria had chosen a moment, but it felt like the whole universe was on the brink of collapse. Our secrets, our fears, truth and lies, all clashing in a storm of consequences that held the potential to fracture everything we had. As chaos erupted before us, I clung to the sliver of hope. Could love still blossom amidst the ruins of pain? Or would the shadows that haunted Maria finally close in, suffocating every chance of escape? The shout hung in the air like a specter, overshadowing everything. I felt Mariah's fingers twitch, her despair a palpable weight pressing against my chest. Time seemed to fracture, the moment suspended between the influx of sirens and the ominous promise of what lay ahead if she faltered. The second officer took another step towards us, his gaze harsh and uncompromising. "Stand down," he commanded, directing his attention toward the stranger who seemed to pulse with rage. "We'll take care of this. You're going to regret getting involved in this mess." I couldn't allow fear to paralyze my voice any longer. "No," I shouted, focusing my gaze on the hulk of a man. "She doesn't need to be treated like she's a criminal. You have to understand she's been trapped for so long." Maria turned to me, her eyes swollen with unshed tears, caught between a desperate longing for liberation and the fear of rejection. She was caught in the crossfire of her choices, the version of herself she no longer recognized, grappling with the possibility of hope. Just leave him alone." Her voice was unsteady, but firm. She was asserting herself, forcing an identity back into the fray. "They don't know me. You don't know me." The stranger sneered, a mask he held up to shield his vulnerability. "Need I remind you, Maria, that they aren't your friends? They're here to punish you." A rift opened again in the moment that followed, the darkness looming ever closer. But I saw the flicker of something within Maria's spark of determination that momentarily dispelled the shadows behind her. Taking a bold step forward, I let my gaze soften, wishing to shatter the cold reality threatening to envelop her. "You've always had the strength." I stepped closer, reaching out with an open palm. "You can choose differently. You can fight back against this." "Fight?" she echoed, disbelief shadowing her features. "I've been fighting my entire life. I don't even know how to win anymore." "Winning means surviving," I whispered, consumed by the gravity of her struggle. "And you've already survived so much. Don't let the past erase the strength you've forged from your pain. Embrace it. You owe it to yourself." With each word, the gap between us seemed to close, as if the universe itself yearned to blend our raw pain and flickering hope into an elemental force. But the energy swirling around us crackled with tension, a balance poised for upheaval. The stranger leaned in, malicious and insistent. "She'll only end up broken again. You think this moment changes anything? When the doubts creep back in, and she remembers what she lost, no." I steadied my voice, claiming the truth for Maria. "Those memories can fuel her to rise. It's okay to be afraid, but it's not who you are. You're more than the shadows that chase you." And yet, just when I felt the air shift as if hope were breaking free, the second officer lunged at the stranger, an undeniable instinct to impose order amid the chaos. In that split second, everything splintered. A gasp from the crowd, A flurry of footsteps, and Mariah's eyes filled with terror as the man stumbled back, caught off guard. "Stop." Mariah's voice pierced through the melee, a plea steeped in frayed emotion. Her expression morphed into one of deep-rooted panic combined with an overwhelming resolve to protect me, to resist the darkness that threatened us both. "Don't you dare come for me," she shouted, a fight igniting within her. Yet, before I could fully grasp the moment, a flash of color caught my eye. A child had slipped away from the gathering crowd, small and innocent, wandering toward the chaos that surrounded us, eyes wide with curiosity. Time slowed again, and in that heartbeat, I saw Mariah's heart fracture anew, the fear of both the danger and what it might mean to finally embrace herself magnified tenfold. "No, not like this." I lunged forward, my hands reaching out instinctively to protect the child, hoping to shield him from the eruption that could unfold. But as I moved, a familiar face emerged from the periphery. A woman, her thinning hair escaping the weave of her scarf, eyes filled with recognition and determination. "Get back," she shouted, pushing against the throng, inching closer, her voice thick with urgency and compassion. "Don't," I screamed, feeling the desperation claw at my throat. "Get the child away," but everything swirled into disarray. The moment fraying, a vortex of raw emotions capturing all of us, crashing against the walls of the alley. The stranger's mouth twisted into a menacing smile as he raised a determined fist, a power play that felt like certain doom. With one trembling breath, my heart screamed that I couldn't lose Maria, couldn't let the shadows swallow her whole. I turned to inch closer, the bond between us hanging in uncertain balance, hoping for the unbearable chance that perhaps, just perhaps, our stories could intertwine to write a narrative of resilience. And just as Maria took a step forward, shock shuddering across her face, the reality struck me with unforgiving clarity. In the throes of chaos, as choices remained tethered to pain, I realized that this night bore a far more complex darkness than I ever anticipated. Each of us was on the cusp of becoming, but what would we choose to embody? And then, as the stranger's voice growled fiercely through the din, the ground beneath us trembled with a shocking revelation, the air thick with dread and charged potential. "You think you can save her? You have no idea what's coming if you do." The crowd braced itself, and in that moment, the chilling truth swept through like wildfire. How would we face the shadows, together or apart? Would love fight for space in the arms of uncertainty, or would it be extinguished, suffocated by the weight of the past? And just then, as darkness clawed at our resolve, we all made our choices and the world twisted beneath our feet, leaving the very fabric of hope hanging by a thread. The weight of what lay ahead pressed heavily against the back of my mind as I stepped into the chaos. The stranger's menacing glare cut through the thrumming tension around us like a serrated blade, and I could feel Mariah's fear ignite beside me, flickering like a candle in a storm. "Everyone back!" The officer yelled, but his voice barely penetrated the cacophony of rising panic. My heart drummed against my ribs, urging me forward to do something. Anything. Mariah's eyes were alight with confusion and worry, the battle between her longing for safety and her yearning for emancipation gripping her. "What do we do?" she whispered, the tremor in her voice betraying the fierce resolve she had just shown. "I can't go back to that place." "I can't go back." "No," I whispered, trying to draw her strength from within. "You don't have to. We'll find a way." But the wildness swirling around us was threatening to engulf her, the stranger's malevolence radiating like static electricity, invigorating the fear coursing through the air. "You still think this pathetic act of defiance will save you? Look at the reality unfolding." All around us others watched, vividly aware of the gravity of the moment, eyes glued to the confrontation like moths drawn to a flame. My focus, however, remained fixed on Maria, whose brow creased with desperation. "Shouldn't you be grateful? A second chance at escaping?" He challenged her, his words poison, seeping into her resolve. "This is your last moment of freedom. Don't squander it holding the hands of the weak." I felt the heat of anger simmer within me, bubbling up as I clenched my fists. "She's not weak," I blurted, my voice breaking through. She's more than you could ever understand, and you can't take that away from her. So the gallant knight returns, the stranger sneered, glancing at me and then Maria as if weighing her worth against my claim. But knights fall. Just another illusion manufactured by your desperate heart. Stop it. Maria screamed, her voice cutting through the haze. Just stop. Incredibly, a silence enveloped the scene, the intensity of her demand commanding an unexpected pause. Even the police officers halted, glancing at one another in confusion. It was the breath before the plunge, a pivotal moment where defiance met desperation. Listen to me. Maria beseeched, her hands trembling. All my life, I've been treated as a shadow, a gust of wind. But I want to be seen, I want to stand on my own. No more running. In that singular moment, the torment and struggle she bore erupted like a dam bursting, flooding the immediate space with her truth. I took a hesitant step toward her, my heart clamoring forward in an unsteady rhythm. You are not invisible. I reached out, desperate to anchor her essence. You are real, and it's time you fought for your life and for you. Not for anyone else, but for the woman you are fighting to become. With eyes of flame and vulnerability stark against the chaos, she turned to me and, for a flash, the hesitation within dissipated. The stranger recoiled as if stung, the raw resolve of her determination piercing through the web of despair he had woven around her. Maybe you'll get your second chance, he hissed through clenched teeth, anger swirling in the depths of his gaze. But understand, every choice has a price and you may not have guessed the cost of this one. The tension thickened around us, the crowd's energy swirling like a tempest, swaying in the balance between fear and hope. My heart raced. The battle was just beginning, but the duel was so much more than physical. It was a fight for Mariah's soul, for the flickering light within her that vowed to overcome the dark. And then, as the ground seemed to shift beneath our feet, a potential ally emerged from the back of the crowd, a figure cloaked in unfathomable sadness, yet shimmering with strength. I recognized her instantly. It was Elena, Mariah's grandmother, the woman who had sown stories of resilience into Mariah's very being long before shadows crept in. Let her go. Elena shouted, her voice cutting through the storm. You have no claim over her life anymore. In that moment, with surprise washing over Mariah's face, I felt the world constrict, anticipation hanging heavily in the air. Could this small act of solidarity hold the power to change the trajectory of our fate? But as I watched Mariah's eyes widen in recognition and longing, the tension twisted painfully in my chest. Would this newfound strength be enough to quell the darkness? Or would it stoke a fire we weren't ready to face? And then, just when hope began to glimmer through the cracks, the stranger stepped closer, a sinister smile unfurling across his face. It was the kind of smile that foreboded something far beyond outside our control, an insidious promise that threatened to consume everything we held dear. You think this is just about her? He sneered, casting a glance toward me that sent a shiver down my spine. You have no idea what else is at stake. I end that final, loaded silence, my breath hitched, the realization suffocating me. A trap had been laid, a revelation awaited to ignite our deepest fears and expose our hidden truths. Was this the moment we had prepared for, the moment when everything would unravel? As Mariah's gaze locked with mine, shadows intertwining with shards of light, I felt time fracture once more. Hope hung in the balance, but whispers of betrayal curled ominously in the air. What was it the stranger hoped to reveal? And at what cost? Every second stretched out, lack of clarity mingling with possibility, leaving us suspended on the edge between darkness and a kind of freedom we could barely imagine. How far would our love carry us in this moment of heartbreaking uncertainty? And as the stranger stepped forward again, a cruel intent dancing in his eyes, the realization hit me hard. This was merely the beginning of a reckoning we could never foresee. One that would expose the fragility of love amid the relentless tide of shadows encroaching on our lives. The air thickened with an almost tangible dread, a sensation that brushed against my skin like the whisper of an unwelcome wind. The crowd's hushed anticipation seemed to heighten every heartbeat, every unsteady breath. Maria stood frozen beside me, her spirit flickering, uncertain, while the stranger loomed, his posture a malignant reminder of the grip he still held over her. "Let's play a game," he proposed, his voice low but cutting through the weight of the moment like a blade. "If you truly wish to stand on your own, dear Maria, then let's see what you're willing to sacrifice for this newfound freedom." "Sacrifice?" she asked, her voice trembling, yet laced with a hint of defiance. "What do you want from me?" He leaned closer, close enough for me to smell the bitterness coiling around him. "Everything," he said with an unsettling calm. "You have no idea how deep the roots of your past dig, how many lives are entwined with yours. Choose wisely, or I might just unravel the threads of fate you so desperately cling to." The meaning of his words hung in the air, a heavy fog that seeped into the most vulnerable corners of our hearts. I glanced at Maria, the fear etched into her features, softening the resolve that had somewhat emerged a moment ago. I was desperate to shield her from the storm brewing within the stranger's sinister machinations. "Don't listen to him," I urged, my voice low and fierce. "He's trying to manipulate you. You're stronger than this." Mariah's stare flickered between us, the weight of her indecision pressing down on her. "What do I do?" she asked, the specter of doubt creeping back into her voice. "Follow your heart," I whispered, my own heart thundering in anticipation of her response. "Believe in your true fight for it. I'll stand with you." The stranger laughed, a cruel sound that sent shivers racing down my spine. "How touching," he mocked. "But love is not a shield against hardship, nor does it offer protection when the world decides to turn its back. You'll truly learn how isolated you are." Maria's gaze flickered back to him, but I could see the gears turning in her mind. I could feel her sticking to my side, the flicker of confidence seeking to break free once more. "If I'm so isolated," she said slowly, carefully crafting her words with an underlying steel, "why are you here? Why do you care what I do?" He merely smirked, but there was a darkness pooling within his eyes, revealing that he was rattled. I could sense the tide turning, the shift in power, though it felt precarious. Maria was awakening, unearthing fragments of strength from deep within. "Because you're already tangled in my web, little one," he declared, and I noticed a hint of desperation in his tone. "No matter how fast you run, the echoes of your past will follow you. I know things you've forgotten, things that will twist like a knife in your heart and shape your very essence." "Then tell me," Maria shot back, her voice full of fire now. "What do you know?" The crowd held its breath, the gravity of the moment leaving everyone motionless. I felt a surge of pride for her, a flicker of hope igniting within the tempest of chaos. "The past is not erased," he goaded, "and nor will it ever let you forget. Did you ever wonder what happened to the mother you grew up believing abandoned you? The woman hidden in the shadows of your memories, lingering just out of reach? You think yourself so liberated, but every rebel must confront the ghosts. And I assure you, they bite much harder when they come creeping back." His words struck her like a blow, the raw pain spilling from his lips swirling around us, wrapping its tendrils around our hearts. I wanted to shout, to scream that he was nothing but a puppet-wielding illusion, yet I felt her turmoil rise. For a fleeting moment, her brave facade began to crack, vulnerability seeping into the edges of her defiance. "She's not a ghost," I said, trying to hold tight to the fragments of hope we had forged together. Yet I too felt the encroaching fear of what lay ahead. "She's here, in this moment, and it's the courage to push through our pain that defines us, not the past that binds us." Maria looked back at me, her eyes glassy yet fierce, and I could see her wrestling with the fears that had been unleashed. "You don't know what he's talking about," she said quietly, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. "Maybe I do," I admitted, my own heart clenched tight around the thorns of uncertainty. "But we cannot let our past dictate who we are now or who we wish to become. Not for him, not for anyone." Yet as I spoke, doubts blossomed like weeds, each one whispering its own brand of poison. Fear warred with love, clarity mingled with dread, and the future which should have felt full of possibility now felt ensnared in his dark promise of memories long buried. Just then, a soft voice interrupted the suffocating silence. "Maria?" It was Elena, her face lined with worry, her voice steady like a beacon piercing through the disarray. "We can find a way together. Remember who you are, remember the strength our family carries. You carry it within you. A surge of warmth washed over Maria, a flicker of light igniting among the shadows. I sensed the battle poised on the edge, the tension taut as string, ready to snap. But then, the stranger's laughter cut through the moment, a mocking echo that threw us all back into dark uncertainty. I see you're clinging to sentiments of fear, nostalgia, and sorrow, he said, his tone suddenly lighter, yet venomous. But what if I told you? He leaned closer, words spilled from his mouth like a sinister serenade. The very reason your mother gave you up will be unveiled tonight. And once it's known, you'll wish you never wanted to break free. The push towards freedom comes with consequences you cannot imagine or, indeed, endure. As he spoke, I felt a cold dread snaking around my heart. Maria's face paled, the potential devastation hovering on the horizon, a storm yet to crash. No, she whispered, the implications of his words wrapping around her, stifling her burgeoning strength. In that moment, I saw the flicker of hope in her eyes, dulled by the heavy cloak of fear and despair. The threat of revelation hung ominously in the air, signaling a precarious precipice we were fast approaching. And so, the darkness began to pull us back, yet within the shadows danced hope, because amidst the turmoil, I could see the flicker of Mariah's true self, battling against the gloom with relentless ferocity. But as the stranger prepared to unleash the truths that could shatter everything, I held my breath, knowing that even if love filled the chasms of despair, the journey meant facing the past we each feared the most. Would we be able to face what came next, or would the cost of our awakening become a burden we couldn't bear? The storm outside reflected the chaos within as the wind howled against the walls, threatening to break free everything contained inside. The stranger stood, a silent harbinger of the storm that approached, his gaze fixed on Maria, unyielding and dark. My heart raced, thrumming with an intense anxiety, each pulse a reminder that time was slipping away from us like grains of sand through clenched fists. Tonight marks the beginning of the end for the fairy tale you cling to, he said, his tone dripping with malice. We'll see how long your courage holds when the truth strikes. As if compelled by an unseen force, the crowd shifted uneasily, their presence a hollow echo around us. Fear mingled with anticipation, the murmur of whispered doubts weaving through the air like the storm raging beyond. I wanted to scream, to wrench her from his grasp, but the bond that held me firmly in place was the undeniable connection between us, the bond of shared weary hearts fighting against the darkness. Suddenly, with a strength I didn't know I possessed, I stepped forward, positioning myself between Maria and the stranger. You won't do this, I declared, my voice stronger than the fear trembling inside me. You're nothing but a shadow trying to suffocate the light. Maria has faced enough torment, and tonight will not be the night her past claims her future. Brave words for one so naive, he replied, sneering. She can pretend to be untethered from her history, but the truth has a way of clawing to the surface. Like every other dirty little secret, it will emerge, and you, my dear, will not be able to shield her from it. The moment seemed to stretch infinitely, the challenge hanging in the air. Maria watched me with an intensity that set my heart on fire and doused it with trepidation, and I could see the enormity of my words pile upon her like stones. Elena stepped forward, her gaze fierce. Maria, whatever this man says, you are not defined by your past. Look at us. Your family, your strength has always been within reach. Face it together. Don't let him tear you apart. Family, the stranger mocked, a mirthless grin spreading across his face. What a quaint sentiment. But tell me, what lies behind the warm embrace of that family? Closeted skeletons? Generational pain? Before this night is over, we'll find out. With each cut of his words, I felt Mariah's spirit waver, each barb driving deeper into the light she was fighting to reclaim. The shadows danced menacingly across her features, and for a moment, I feared we would lose her to the depths of despair. Speak your truth then, Maria challenged, though her voice trembled. If you believe it can break me, the challenge hung heavily, a dare echoing against the raw walls and impatient night. The stranger leaned closer, his breath hot and laden with the essence of dread. Very well, my dear. The truth is ugly, and it reveals itself when you least expect it. It's not merely about your mother's actions. It's about her choices, the sacrifices she made in the name of the love that abandoned you. At that moment, it was as if the world held its breath. Mariah's eyes widened, a flicker of recognition flaring even as fear threatened to squelch it. My heart hammered painfully in my chest, driven by an even more profound need to shield her from whatever revelations lurked in the shadows. "What do you mean?" she whispered, her body taut with anticipation, rage, and confusion. "I speak of desperation," he said, his grin widening inexplicably. "A mother's love that caved under pressures you could never comprehend. The truth is rarely what it seems. You were more than a child, you were a burden, an anchor she couldn't carry. And on this night, you'll learn how deep the love ran and how hollow it ultimately became." The words scraped against the walls of her heart, seeking to burrow deep and create cracks from which despair could seep. I reached for her hand, intertwining my fingers with hers, letting her feel the warmth of my unwavering belief in her strength and resilience. "Don't listen to him," I claimed. "He thrives on chaos and tragedy. Your story is greater than his twisted vision. Let him reveal the past. It cannot diminish the human you've become today. You are still here, and your courage defines you." A soft rumble echoed in the distance, causing the crowd to shuffle uneasily. I saw it then, the flickering weight of fear creeping back in the lines of Mariah's face, mingled with the remembrance of who she was becoming. "I have to know," Maria murmured, torn between the longing for answers and the dread that knowing them might shatter her. The stranger, sensing her vulnerability, leaned even closer, his words thick with temptation. "Stay still, my dear. The truth will come to you as a gift from the moment you recognize that not all gifts come adorned in pretty packages." Just then, a sudden glint caught my eye, a flicker of movement beneath the crowd of figures shifting, their face obscured. Something in my gut shifted. I narrowed my eyes, focusing, the storm outside rising. A figure stepped out from the fringes. "Maria." A voice broke through the cacophony, urgent and familiar. "Do not give in to him. You are stronger than he wants you to believe." My heart skipped a beat. It was Rosa, Mariah's estranged sister, the one who had vanished without a trace for years. Her presence was like a beacon piercing the storm, offering an unexpected glimmer of hope. But as Maria turned, shock flickering across her features, the stranger laugh faded deep, menacing cackle. "Ah, the family reunion you never asked for. Welcome back, dear sister. I hope you're prepared to confront the truths we all tried to bury." Rosa's face paled, and in that moment, both joy and terrible foreboding filled the air. The tension mounted with chaotic fervor, and I could feel the pulse of something truly monumental about to unfold. The thunder rolled above, echoing the energy swirling within us, as the paths of the past began to converge on this single defining moment, leaving me acutely aware of the shadows closing in again. This was no longer merely about Maria. It was a labyrinth of intertwined destinies and desires unraveling, leading toward an unavoidable confrontation of heart. But as the air thickened with hesitation, I didn't know if our collective strength could hold against the storm brewing just outside the facade of our reality. What horrifying truths lay buried, and how exposed would we all feel once they were clawed out into the open? The answers awaited us, just beyond the veil, but were we truly ready for them, and at what cost? The tension stung like electric charge in the air, hanging over us like the dark clouds outside. Rosa stood before us, vulnerability radiating from her as she searched Mariah's face for a sign of understanding, an unspoken plea in her wide, frightened eyes. The crowd fell into a hushed silence, as if respecting an unvoiced agreement that everything about this moment was too monumental to speak over. "Why now, Rosa?" Mariah's voice was a fragile thread that could snap at any moment, revealing the depth of her hurt. "You vanished." After everything, the weight of the unsaid words pressed heavily between them, each syllable threatening to unearth a past laden with grief and betrayal. I had to find myself first. "I was lost in what I thought was my own shame," Rosa admitted, her voice breaking under the strain of long-buried emotions. "But I never stopped thinking about you. I was afraid to come back, to face her, to face you. But I can't stand by any longer. Not when he's here." Her gesture at the stranger was accusatory, filled with fierce protectiveness. Afraid? The stranger scoffed, poison lacing his tone. You fear him, but the true terror lies within your own blood, Maria. Rosa ran. She turned her back, because she is just as scared of the truth that binds you. Rosa flinched at his words, but she stood her ground, turning slightly to glance at me, her eyes glinting with a spark of courage. You don't get to dictate our narrative. No matter the truths you claim to hold, we will not shrink before you. But doubt flickered across Mariah's face, like shadows playing tricks under the flickering light of the storm. What truth? She murmured, more to herself than to us, her gaze distanced as if grappling with the enormity of her sister's return and the implications it bore. The truth about our mother, Rosa whispered, her resolve crumbling momentarily. I found letters, Maria. Letters she wrote during the darkest days of her life. I thought the truths that could shatter us were the answers we both needed. But I was too scared to come back. I thought I could protect you by staying away. Mariah's breath hitched, and for a heartbeat, the suffocating air grew thinner. Letters from her? The mother who pushed me away? A flash of understanding swept through me, connecting the dots of their fractured history. I felt the sting of compassion and respect for the undying bond that still tethered them to each other, even when the world had turned so bitter. Yes, and some of them addressed to you. The love was there, buried beneath layers of fear and regret. Letters filled with desperation and apologies, Rosa explained, her voice thick with emotion. She wanted to explain so much but never found the courage. And all these years, we have been at the mercy of the stories told by others. A cacophony of emotions flickered through Mariah's features: anger, grief, longing colliding in a tempest that mirrored the chaos outside. Her heart was a kaleidoscope of feelings, and I strained to comprehend the depth of her turmoil. But why now? Why come back when I am finally trying to heal? I came back to help you understand that you are not defined by her mistakes, Rosa implored, tears glimmering in her eyes. You are so much more than her shadows. The stranger's eyes narrowed as if sensing the fortification of their familial bond. How quaint, he sneered. But keep in mind that the past is a hungry animal. It won't let you escape so neatly. No matter how many letters you conjured up, I wanted to howl in defiance at his chilling presence, to argue that surely this was a turning point for us. Hope flickering in Mariah's eyes had to mean something. But even as I took a step closer to reassure her, the air filled with the looming dread of revelations yet to come. Maria, I said, taking her other hand, my heart racing. You're not responsible for your mother's choices. You're here now, and that matters far more than the past. Rosa's eyes lit with sympathy and gratitude as she turned to me. Thank you, she whispered softly, as if my presence was a brick laid on the foundation of her sister's resilience. Enough. The stranger bellowed, cutting through the fragile web of connection we had begun to weave. This charade means nothing when the darkness comes to claim you. The winds outside roared anew, shaking the walls around us as if echoing his threat. Those gathered flinched, eyes darting toward the door, helpless against the encroaching storm. I felt Maria tremble against my grip, the unyielding strength she showed earlier starting to wane. Then, unexpectedly and without warning, lightning illuminated the dark room, casting stark shadows. The power flickered before plunging us into utter darkness, save for the ghostly glow of the storm. It was in that breathless moment of chaos that I saw Hera, an elderly woman inching through the crowd, her face lined with stories waiting to be told. Wait. I know the truth. She gasped, breathless as she reached us, her voice heavy with the weight of history. I was there. I can tell you what really happened. Heart pounding. I felt a rush of dread and a surge of hope intertwining. The truth they had all feared might just pull us further into the storm's embrace. Yet as I turned towards her, ready to embrace whatever story she possessed, the whisper of fate slithered through the tension, raising the stakes higher. What had been buried for so long was reaching for the light, and we were faced with the heart-stopping revelation that the storm was merely the precursor to the real tempest yet to come. The tempest twirled around us, each gust of wind mirroring the turmoil folded into every soul surrounding the alley. The woman's breathless declaration hung in the thick air, a shard of terrifying truth cutting through the confusion like glass. I turned to face her, my heart racing, feeling the crackling tension shift into 1,000 sparks of reckoning. Behind her, the stranger's mocking gaze shifted, barely concealing his unease. "Tell us," Maria whispered, her voice barely more than a whisper, but there was a flicker in her eyes, a hint of renewed determination stirring alongside the fear that "I knew your mother." The woman continued, her voice steadying, clearing the cobwebs of doubt that crept around her. "I was her neighbor for years, a witness to the ache that wrapped around her heart. She didn't abandon you, Maria. She believed she was protecting you. But in doing so, she sent herself into a spiral she couldn't escape." "What do you mean?" Maria pressed, desperation edging her voice, the raw pain of years' worth of questions pushing through. "She fell into darkness after your father. It shattered her. And she believed that keeping you away, making you think she had chosen something else, would keep you safe from the suffering she felt. The letters, the entwinements of her heart. It was never about the love she lacked for you, but about the fears that suffocated her." The woman's gaze locked with Mariah's, desperately pleading for understanding. Tension rippled through the crowd, the murmurs rising like a tidal wave. I could almost see the moment the realization washed over Maria, coaxing the vulnerability and confusion to the surface. "So she was scared? Scared of being a parent? Of me?" The tremor in her voice unraveled me, a mixture of heartbreak and empathy for the mother who had fought her own battles. She was afraid of repeating the cycle of pain, of passing it on to you. Her fear became a tether around her, keeping her ensnared within her own shadows, the woman explained, her voice steady yet tinged with compassion. "But here is the thing, Maria. The truth, no matter how terrifying, will always rise. And it is what you choose from that truth that will shape who you are." With each syllable, it felt as if me and everything around us tilted, teetering on the brink of awakening, longing for liberation. Mariah's expression shifted, something awakening within her, a fragile bloom looking for light amid the overwhelming storm. Rosa took a step closer, her voice filled with fervor. "You are not your mother's mistakes. You are a new story, Maria, chance to rewrite your fate, free from her chains, free to choose who you become." "But what if I can't?" Mariah's voice cracked, helplessness crawling along her skin. "What if the things I fear about myself, they are true? What if I can't change the course? Then let us rise together," I declared suddenly, feeling the urgency pulse through me, my grip tightening around hers. "Whatever comes, we'll face it. You don't have to fight alone anymore." The strength of my words collided with the tempest outside, the wind howling in agreement as I forged a path of hope through the encroaching darkness. The stranger moved forward, simmering with contempt. "You wish to loom large in her choices? It won't matter how much you claw at her heart. The truth will always rear its ugliest head," he spat, his scorn ricocheting against the wavering embers of courage that sparked around us. "It's not about hiding," Maria shouted, surprising even herself, her voice gaining ferocity. "It's about rising. I will not let fear dictate who I am." In that moment, the woman stepped forward again, lighting the dark corners of the alley. "Do you see now?" she continued, alight with hope and warmth. "The power to choose your truth, your path. It's been there all along. Let that light blaze through the dark." The wind feasted hungrily around us as the skies rumbled above, but the storm outside was no match for the one growing within Maria. "You're right," she breathed, her voice fortified by a new and fierce resolve. "I won't allow the shadows of the past to consume me. I choose to create a future for myself, one built on my own understanding, not my consequences." Her eyes glinted with renewed clarity, bright enough to rival the storm itself. The crowd echoed with shouts of solidarity, people stepping closer, each voice adding its strength to her burgeoning resolve. "You can do this. You are not alone. Fight back." The stranger's expression contorted with fury and disbelief, and I felt the energy shift wildly, wrapping around us like a cocoon, energizing the very air we breathed. "You think you're breaking free? It's a mirage, Maria," he bellowed dangerously. "It will crush you." The tension snapped like a taut cord, and against the backdrop of the rising storm, it became palpable. Maria was ready to unleash the fire she had quelled for far too long. "I'll take that chance," she declared, unwavering. "I'm ready to face the truth, whoever it may involve." As if responding to her outcry, the dark clouds roared, sending a bolt of lightning down that illuminated the alley, and for a moment, we all stood transfixed, suspended in the brilliance of that moment. Light had pierced the darkness, and with it came the knowledge that without uncertainty, we rarely discover who we truly are. So be it, the stranger hissed, the flicker of fear suddenly tinged with desperation. The crowd surged forward, pushing against him, driven by an unyielding desire to reclaim their own truths, their own choices. Together, I interjected, raising my arms as if to shield Maria from any remaining darkness. We rise together, and in that unfurling moment, just as fortunes sway like a feather caught in the wind, we advanced against the shadows. The storm above echoed our resilience, and with each step I took beside Maria, I felt the atmosphere change. Love does not simply bloom in moments of joy. It thrives amidst the chaos, fuels the storm within, makes us whole. In the embrace of connection. We carved our space, and each of us found a part of ourselves previously hidden, battered, merely waiting to behold the light. We let go, casting aside all fear and trepidation, on the brink of a new journey that didn't shy away from the storm but danced within it, bold and unyielding. And as we faced our future together, I knew one thing for certain: no matter the whispers of the past, we had all chosen resilience. And in embracing our chronicles, we stood to witness the most triumphant revolution against ourselves. Maybe, just maybe, love was the undeniable force that could illuminate our paths, making us feel profoundly human amidst the shadows, reminding us that every story, like every storm, seeks the clarity of light to guide it home. As the last flicker of lightning illuminated our faces, I squeezed Mariah's hand tight, and together, we breathed in the rain, realizing, finally, that we do not stand merely in the eye of the storm, but rather, we are the storm itself. And in the unfurling of that realization, I felt the ground beneath us solidify, a promise of hope emerging amidst the darkness, forever changing the landscapes of our souls. Together, I whispered, and in that affirmative breath, amidst the symphony of thunder and turmoil, we laughed back at the shadows. We would not be broken. We were alive, and we were free.